Hey, greetings everyone. Wouldn't you know it, just about the moment I'm going to hit record on the live video, a garbage truck backs into my driveway and starts beeping and dumping garbage and everything like that. It waited all day until the 30 seconds I was supposed to start the video, and boom, there it was. But welcome everyone to the summer edition of the Twin Cities Lightroom user community. I'm Rick Floor. I'm a quality engineer from Adobe, and I work on the photography products, Camera Raw, Lightroom Classic, and the photography ecosystem. And I wanted to thank you all for showing up either today live on Facebook or to watch the video later on Facebook as a recorded video on the Twin Cities Lightroom community page. And for those of you whom I hope, my fingers are crossed here, that we have the ability to record this video and put it on our YouTube channel. Those of you who do not have Facebook will be joining us later as well. So greetings and welcome. And to that regard, I wanted to say a little bit about Facebook and non-Facebook users. We have about 800 people on our Facebook page, and you would have gotten notifications and invites for this meeting. And we have another 120 people or so who subscribed to email invites for this meeting, and not all of those people have Facebook. So to that end, we've created a Twin Cities Photoshop and Lightroom community page where we can post finished videos. And then if you are not a Facebook user, you've got a place to go out and get those videos as well and watch them in a non-Facebook context. However, since this is the first time we're doing this, we're recording the video live as we are broadcasting it live as well. We're hoping everything works out, and if it all goes well, there'll be a general email going out either later today or tomorrow explaining the process to those people who are not on Facebook. But for the rest of you, welcome. And I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a heads up here right now. I'm not doing this with a big crew or anything. This is me in my basement looking out the window at the street, and there's dogs and creatures and everything walking by right here. So if I appear distracted, sometimes something interesting happens outside and I may glance up. I apologize in advance for that. But I wanted to tell you that I'm excited to be here and looking forward to what we're going to be presenting today, because we've got a lot of information to cover today, so hang tight. I do want to tell you that after the initial group of announcements that I'm going to go through, we're going to talk about the June 15th product launch that happened at Adobe, which was brought across the board for all photography products, got some exciting new features. And then we're going to be demoing a couple of the extra special features. So if you're into watching somebody crank the develop sliders around, you'll want to stay tuned for the second part of the meeting. But hopefully it'll all broadcast in one video and everything will work great. I will not be manning the chat pod during the meeting. I just don't have that many hands and that many screens that I can look at and see everything going on, and I don't want to distract those that are watching the meeting live by going through and reading a chat pod and trying to answer questions there. So that having been said, we'll move on. So we've talked about the demos. I've been doing some other meetings on Facebook Live and on Zoom, and a couple of those meetings on the Zoom's channel have been the photography talk that we've been doing about twice a month, and the Lightroom Q&A that we've been doing basically twice a month as well. I'm going to be discontinuing the photography chat. The photography chat is not well attended, especially as of late. I know summer plans and 4th of July holidays and things like that have intervened, but it seems like the photography chat is somewhere that's better served for the camera club environment. So if you're participating in local camera clubs, that's probably a better place to go for general photography chat. However, I do plan on maintaining the Lightroom Q&A and probably having that about every 2 weeks. That time is going to really vary depending upon the day and the week. Right now, Adobe is on summer shutdown, so I'm technically supposed to be off work today, but I wanted to get this meeting broadcast since it was coming in so late. And in about 2 weeks, I will probably have a afternoon Lightroom Q&A session that's about an hour long, and that'll be on Zoom. We don't typically record those, but I'm going to be exploring whether I can save videos from Zoom and post those to our Lightroom YouTube channel as well. So got that out of the way. You'll be watching for that in Facebook, and I will be putting the photography chats in the emails to the non-Facebook users at the group. So there we go. As far as community meetings go for the remainder of the year, Adobe has asked us not to have or attend any meetings where there are large public gatherings due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the preventive measures that are in place. So I can tell you right now, we do not plan on holding at Concordia a meeting in September or a meeting in December. March of next year is an open question at this point. If the pandemic's under control, we will reconvene at Concordia. If not, then we will continue to have virtual meetings. And it's my goal to have the virtual meeting that would normally be scheduled for the second Wednesday in September, on or around the second Wednesday of September and the second Wednesday of December. As events dictate, we may move those meetings ever so slightly. For example, the June meeting this week or this month got moved to July. And there was a very good reason for that. The Lightroom community meeting would have normally taken place on June the 10th, if I remember correctly. And because I had a little bird who told me that we were going to be having a major release of software on June the 15th, I decided to postpone it to the week after June the 15th. Post-launch duties were a little heavy for me, so I had to push it out a little further, and I pushed it out until today, July 6th. And this is the meeting that would have taken place on June the 10th, but because we had all this exciting news that I couldn't quite tell you on June the 10th, I moved it out to July the 6th, and hopefully it was worth the wait. So we've got that kind of covered there. So the first thing about our launch on June the 15th is I'm going to go down to Windows here, and I'm going to kick open my Start button, and you'll notice that I have some icons here. You'll see there's the Adobe Creative Cloud icon. It is no longer a red icon. It is a rainbow icon. And you'll see that there are new icons for Lightroom Classic, Lightroom Photoshop, and Lightroom Desktop. In fact, if I were to launch the Lightroom or the Creative Cloud Desktop, you'll see that all of the applications received new branding and new icons. And this is very important. For those of you who've been coming to the former user groups, now called community meetings, I used to beat pretty hard on the Lightroom Classic is the square-cornered icon, and Lightroom Desktop in the ecosystem is the round-cornered icon. As you can see, with the exception of Camera Raw, which doesn't really have its own icon, we just have a placeholder for that, all of the icons are now rounded corners. The icons have changed color, background, outline, and they've really changed quite a bit. And one of the things you'll see is that there's a very clear visual difference between Lightroom, the cloud-based photo service, which would be what I would call Lightroom Desktop during the course of our meeting, and Lightroom Classic, which is the traditional product that you've been using since 2006. LRC is now the icon for Lightroom Classic. LR is now the Lightroom icon for the Lightroom Desktop, and Photoshop remains PS for Photoshop. If you do download the new Photoshop camera app that's available for iPhone, it says PSC on it, so it's got a 3-digit icon as well. And I think if you're using the Photoshop Express product, it is PSX on the icon. So be aware that there is some new branding out there. There is some changes to the icons, and that it should be very visually obvious if you look down at my taskbar here, which one is Lightroom Classic and which one is Lightroom Desktop. And if I launch Photoshop real quick, we'll click the open button here on Photoshop. You'll see that Photoshop and all of the products have new splash screens. They're white with the new icon and the new Adobe Creative Cloud icon as well. So you'll be able to see that there is a visual difference in the programs, old versus new, and similar programs, Lightroom Desktop versus Lightroom Classic. So everything I used to tell you about square icon, round icon has gone out the window now, and you'll want to make certain that you're clicking on the right icon when you're clicking on Lightroom, because there are two icons, and one's got 2 letters, one's got 3 letters, and I'm going to leave it up to you to remember that Lightroom Classic has the LRC icon. And that's very important. I think it was a good positive change for us because before the icon corner roundness was less obvious and the color shade in the lettering was less easy to discern. It's very easy to tell which program you're using right now just by clicking on the icon. So all of your mobile products, when you look at your Android, your iOS devices, when you look at the Lightroom TV app, and when you look at Lightroom on the web, they will all be the rounded LR icon going forward. And this was part of a larger branding change that happened essentially across all of Adobe products. It wasn't just something that was happening to Lightroom, but we did benefit from the uniqueness of the icon. So that's the updated news there from the Creative Cloud front. And one thing I wanted to say too is that when we launched this release in June, on June the 10th, there were a lot of features that went into this release across a lot of products. So in addition to, all of this new feature goodness that we're going to talk about today, and the update in the branding, there were a large number of bugs fixed. And one of the things I do is I report back to the engineering teams on what customers are saying. And one of the key metrics I track is customer reported bugs that are fixed in each release. And in the .3 timeframe, which was released on June 10th, we set a record for the number of customer reported bugs that were fixed by the release. And to me, that could be a bad statement or that could be a good statement. I take it as a very positive statement that our teams went out there and listened to our customers and fixed the bugs that were important to them. And in addition to the large number of bugs that were fixed across all the products for the customer reported, we had a lot of other bugs fixed and a lot of things that were done on the under the hood side that won't readily be apparent in either behavior or in misbehavior, I guess would be the way to put that. So I wanted to start with that. And with that, I'm going to jump right in here and we're going to talk a little bit about Camera Raw first. While this is the Lightroom user community, we tend to try to remember that Camera Raw is the engine that drives Classic. It is the engine that drives the Lightroom ecosystem. And things that are done in Camera Raw eventually filter out into the other products. So that's important. I'm going to launch Photoshop again. And I've got a lovely DNG of my grandson Ulrich prepared here. Here's a picture of Ulrich just about to eat one of his dyed Easter eggs. You can see he's got the dye around his lips and everything. But when I open that DNG in Photoshop right now, I get the new Camera Raw interface. And that's very important to note, is that Camera Raw did a major update to its interface. The jury's still out on whether the majority of the people like it or not, but it is a very important step. If you're coming from a Lightroom world, a Lightroom Classic world in particular, it's very welcoming and very familiar. If you've been using Camera Raw in a non-Lightroom world for the past X number of years, you're probably going to struggle with it at first. It does take you a little while to get used to where things are. Instead of the tabbed interface across the top, you've got panels that expand or contract. It's gone to a darker interface, and many of the tools have moved. Some tools have gone to icon where they were descriptive before. And there's a complete blog post we have out there about the changes in Camera Raw, and I would really recommend that you take a look at those and see what are the features you're looking for. Some features that were incredibly ancient features that are no longer applicable in the real world of camera editing have been deprecated and are no longer a part of the interface. One of these I can think of is there used to be a way in Camera Raw where you could preview sharpening without actually sharpening the image as it went back into Photoshop. There were a lot of customers who would like to edit in Camera Raw but apply their sharpening after the fact in Photoshop using one of the various methods that have been touted as the premium sharpening method of the flavor of the week or month or year or whatever, and a lot of people get ingrained with that. And that feature has been deprecated and is no longer there. So if you want to see Camera Raw not sharpening your image, you want to set the sharpening slider in the detail panel to 0. And there you are. Rather than have a toggle button that you have to turn off, remember to turn back on, you've now got the ability to set that just by turning the slider to 0. If you want to see sharpening, you can see sharpening. If you don't want that sharpening to accompany the image back to Photoshop, turn the slider down. And there are several others of these out there, other features that have been deprecated over the years because that functionality is either something you would no longer use, or it's an outmoded way of doing things that does not provide the best quality, or there's a new way of doing it, or maybe the feature is just moved somewhere else in the interface. So be aware of that. Camera Raw does have a new interface. The way cropping is done now has changed. It is more of a Lightroom-esque type of crop where you move the image behind the crop instead of moving a crop marquee across the image. For users of Lightroom, this is something that they're going to be well used to. For users of Photoshop, Photoshop switched to a similar paradigm a couple of years back, and Camera Raw was lagging. That cropping is now there. And be aware of that too, because that's kind of a big change. And when you make that crop, and cropping in Camera Raw is something I never did before. I did my cropping in Photoshop. I would do my image edit in Camera Raw and my crop afterwards. So it was something that didn't affect me, and I took it on the hop, no problem whatsoever. But just be aware of those kinds of things. The one thing I do want to talk about, and I'll be talking about this throughout the day, and I'll be doing one of the major demos towards the end of the program on this, is the local hue tool. We've always had, let me go back here, just kick out of that and go back to the basic sliders. I'm going to collapse all the panels, and you can set these panels to be in a multi-panel mode where you can have multiple panels open, or you can have just a single panel open, much like Lightroom solo mode. But if you go down to the color mixer here, you'll see that you have hue, saturation, and luminance. And for a long time, we've had luminance as a local adjustment tool. It's essentially your exposure slider. We've had saturation. It's your saturation slider. But we never really had a hue tool. And we do have that now. New in the .3 release, that would be Camera Raw 12.3, Lightroom Classic 9.3, Lightroom Desktop 3.3, and 5.3 on the mobile devices. We now have a local hue adjustment tool. It was one of our more popular feature requests across the breadth of the products, and that is now available to you. And it's something we're going to be demoing later on, but just real quick, I want to show you where it is. I'll select on the local adjustment brush, and if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a local hue right here that contains a fine adjustment toggle and a slider. So if I move this slider with fine adjustment, you can see it moves very slowly as I move across the screen. And as I take off the fine adjustment, you can see it moves very quickly. And what you'll see is you'll see two color bands appear there. One of those color bands shows you your reference color. The other one shows you your source color, how much you're shifting things by. And because I've painted nothing on this image with this brush, you don't see the effect. So I'll put a brush stroke on there, and we'll show you what can happen. Now, people might say, yeah, well, we have local hue. Why would we want this? Well, there's a couple of reasons you would. Local hue lets you paint in hue wherever you would like it, whereas when you were in the hue, saturation, and luminance tool, or color mixer as it's now called, when you were changing hue, you were changing the whole image. And if you'll look, if I swing the reds all the way to the left, they can become slightly purple. If I swing them all the way to the right, they become slightly orange. The new hue tool is not limited to the 40 degrees or so of the color wheel that each one of those sliders was limited to before. The new hue tool will actually go 180 degrees. So let's click on that and let's move it. I can go all the way to blue. I don't have just purple. I can get the entire color spectrum on any local adjustment that I want to do. So that's very, very cool. I'm going to cancel out of here. We'll be doing a Lightroom Classic local hue adjustment to show you how to use it in the real world a little bit later, but I wanted to cover the tool here. All right, I'm going to move on to Lightroom Desktop now. So Lightroom Desktop is the cloud-based tool, and you'll see it right here. And of course, Lightroom Desktop got the same local hue tool. I'm going to click Got It here. If I paint in here and I scroll down the local adjustment tool, you'll see I have a very similar looking tool here, which lets me adjust the hue of an image. Now, I've gotten the question quite a bit, why did we put a local hue tool in and not put saturation and luminance right beside it? Well, luminance is exposure, and it would be redundant to have two sliders there. And I think a lot of people use exposure and would be really upset if we were to move that thing. So I don't want to move exposure. Same thing with saturation. So you'll have to get used to a different way of adjusting when you're in the local adjustment, but this is a huge tool. This lets you do so many things, and we're going to see some examples of that later. The fine adjustment slows down the adjustment so you have precision control, and this is especially helpful when you're working on a skin tone. Skin tones require ultimate precision, and I'll tell you right now that it's going to work great for that. I've been using this tool a lot. Probably one of the big things that you'll notice is we got this thing called versions down here. You see in the bottom corner there's this thing called versions. Versions for the Lightroom ecosystem world are kind of what snapshots were for the Lightroom Classic world. In Lightroom Classic you could take a single raw file, edit it 12 different ways, save each as a snapshot, and have 12 different versions of that finished product and still only have one raw file on your disk. That's a huge advantage. So what we did was we created what's called versions, and I can create a version at any time by clicking this. I can give it a name. We'll call it test version, and now I've got a test version in here that I can go back and I can look at my original and I can look at my test version, and I can create multiple versions of any single file. The cool thing about this is I've got the ability to rename the version anytime I want, to delete the version if I don't want it. But the really, really neat thing is if I go, and I'm going to click off this image to allow my changes to sync up to the cloud. You'll see I have a cloud icon in the corner that is syncing. So the changes that I've made to this image are now syncing up to the cloud. And now that they've synced up there, I'm going to grab my iPad and bring it up on the screen. And we're going to tap on the library icon at the top, and we're going to grab that particular image, allow it to sync down from the cloud, and we've got the ability to do something similar here as well. It says I'm missing my profile. My profile hasn't yet synced, so that's gonna cause us a little bit of difficulty, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. We'll just let it have the Adobe standard profile for now. But we've got the ability now to have these versions sync between our various platforms. So if I want to have versions on my iPad, I can have versions on my iPad. I can come back and I can do edits here and they will sync back to my desktop. And it's really kind of a handy way to have everything around. I get confused sometimes as to whether I'm clicking on my mouse on my screen or whether I'm tapping on the iPad next door. So forgive me if I do that, but I wanted to have this prepped and ready to go for another area called Discovery Posts later on. So that's one of the things that happened. The other thing that happened is a long requested feature. If I go to export and I choose to export a file where I can set all of my settings, I've got the ability to include a watermark now. And that's something that I wasn't able to do before in Lightroom Desktop. Lightroom Mobile on iOS got it first, Lightroom Android got it next, and they had the ability to create text watermarks. And we've got the ability to create a text watermark now. I can put a copyright on there, and I can choose a font. I can give it some horrible font like that. I can change the color to black, I can change the color to white. I can also include or not include a drop shadow, and I can anchor it anywhere I would like on the image. The nice thing about this is whatever this watermark setting I have here as my default watermark setting is, this will sync to the rest of the ecosystem. So I can have it on my iPad, I can have it on my Android phone. The watermark that I'm using here is the same watermark that I'm using there. This is a very highly requested feature. The other thing about that feature is that you know, the fonts you need are going to be basically tied to the fonts that are available on the device, and the sizes, the shapes, the drop shadows, the positioning, all that stuff is controllable by you. Now I know one of the first questions I'm going to get is, yeah, but I have a logo, I have a graphic, I've gone off to one of those places on Facebook that appear in your feed that give you a signature to sign your photos with. And that's all something that we're looking at and hoping to enhance in the future. But no promises on when that would come, but this is the first step towards getting that there. There is now an ecosystem-wide watermark. That watermark does not sync with your watermarks that are in Classic. Those are completely separate systems. So don't expect if you have a watermark in Classic that you'll be able to use that in mobile. That's probably something you're going to have to recreate for now. Let's see. Go in here. I'm reading through my list of stuff here. Custom RAW default settings. If you were part of the Classic meeting that we had back in March, we talked about this pretty heavily. Those are now available on the ecosystem products as well. So you'll be able to essentially say, this is what I want my default edit to look like for this camera, this device, this phone, whatever, and have Lightroom apply all of those edits on import so that you have a starting point that you like and that you're accustomed to. So that's something to see as well. Another thing that I wasn't prepared to demo today was now there are notifications for items in shared albums. You'll see a small bell icon in the upper right that displays a notification comment is available or has been added to a photo. So if somebody hearts a photo or writes a comment on a photo in the Lightroom ecosystem clients, you'll now get notification of that. And that particular notification will allow you to interact with that photo and see what those edits are. That's something that's been long requested as well. There's an activity panel to view the likes and comments. Again, I didn't put any likes and comments on here, and I don't know if I can do one real quickly on the iPad here. We'll put a heart on. It's not a shared album. Never mind. Can't do that quickly, so I won't waste your time. If you'd like to see that, we've got some demos online about how to do that. For those of you who are Russian or Thai speakers, those two languages were added to the Lightroom ecosystem of products, so Russian and Thai is available. And they've done some work on the search engine under the hood. And I don't have a very big catalog sitting here, but it used to be if you typed dog, you'd sometimes get cat. And if you typed cat, you'd sometimes get dog. There's been some work done to kind of improve that. But as I have no dogs or cats in my current catalog that we're going to be using today, it's probably not something I can demo very well. But just be aware there. I'm just going to scroll through the Android features as well and see what else we have. We'll save shared edits here for just a little bit. Versions are available in the Android app. Notifications, watermarks, raw defaults. They've changed the navigation in Android too. They moved the main menu bar to the bottom, so it's easier to reach with your thumb. It was used to be at the top, and it was really hard, and you had to use two hands to use it, so that's pretty great. They've done a lot of changes to shared albums. There's some other things that have been done under the hood for performance, and of course, all of the latest camera raw updates have gone in for camera support and lens support, and for the clients that support Tethering Classic if there were any new cameras for that. All of those things went in across the board, and bug fixes. As far as iOS goes, it got the versions, it got the watermarking, it got the new navigation. There's some new stuff. Local hue is available on the iPad, and I might just as well just quickly show you local hue. I'll tap an image here and bring it up on the iPad, and here's local hue. We'll grab a local adjustment, and let's see, we'll add one by hitting the plus. I forgot to turn on my little thing that so here's a local adjustment going in, and if I go down to the color, you'll see that I have the same local hue tool that was available in the desktop client and in Camera Raw earlier. So we'll cancel out. We don't want to save that one, and I'll go back here, and we'll go back and talk about this a little bit. So with the Lightroom ecosystem clients, so desktop, iOS, Android, web, and Apple TV is not part of this, so I'll exclude them right now. You've got the ability to see what's called Discover Content, and Discover Content is something where you can go in and you can see edits that other people have done. And now, as of the June update, you can submit an edit to Discover Content if you would like. Not only can you go in here and you can say, okay, what were the edits done to this particular image right here? It will navigate through and show you a movie and possibly give you the ability to download a preset at the end. We're taking a moment for this to download. And here it comes in, and it's showing you all of the edits as kind of a little film here, so you can see kind of a before and after of the image, what was done. And if you tap in the upper corner, you can save as a preset. Well, a lot of people said, well, I want to put my images out there. I'd like to be able to get my presets out there as well. And that's now possible. That's something that you can do, is you can create it. We call it user-generated content. And the user-generated content comes from you, our customer, and you can put this out here. You can share it with your friends. If you want a quick and easy way to share a preset with somebody, like your camera club, you could share one image with the edit and everyone could go out and they could download the preset if they like. It's a very nice thing you can do. You can like things on here. You can get information about the shot, and you can, of course, save it as a preset. The other thing you can do is you can tap on the photographer and see all of the images done by that particular photographer, so that if you want to see what kind of edits they do and you want to look through them and say, oh, I like that one, I'd like to have that preset, or you'd like to kind of just give a few hearts on some things, you certainly have the ability to do that. And the other thing that's happened is that we've tried to make this more of a social experience. So one of the things we had to do as a result of this was we had to change the age on the app. And if you've got small children who are using Lightroom, this has come up already. It is possible that there will be content that will be too adult for a 4-year-old. So the App Store has moved we have moved within the App Store our age requirement to 13 years old for this. And that's because of the Discover feed, because we don't want to restrict the type of content that you as photographers shoot and want to share with each other, but we also have to protect the minor population out there. So be advised that that is there. And we have a new product manager, Stephen Hawthorne. Sometimes I hear his name Stephen, sometimes Stefan. I call him Stephen. But he wrote me a little blurb. He says, the community can share inspirational edits to the Discover section of the app. Share your Lightroom edits with associated presets. Save other creative edits as presets, provided they've allowed it. And that's an important point to remember, is that you don't have to save or allow the saving of a preset. You have that option, but it's certainly a great way for others to learn from you and for you to share your experience. And you can find inspiration from other creatives. And it's a great way to get the community going. I see lots of places for this community to go in the future, and it wouldn't hurt you to start dabbling around in the Lightroom community and getting your bearings, because I have a feeling a lot of the photographers you follow, a lot of the instructors that are online, that you visit their tutorials, you watch their videos on YouTube, things like that, I expect many of them to have content out here. And what would be better than going to your favorite photographic educator and grabbing the preset of the cool image he just posted? Something to think about anyway. All right, I'm going to get this off the screen and we're going to go over to Lightroom Classic. Lightroom Classic got some pretty cool stuff here. I'm just going to scroll down to my notes here. I've got screens spread all over the place here, so forgive me if it looks like my eyes are wandering all over. So just real quickly through the Lightroom Classic features. One of the Lightroom Classic features that I was kind of excited about, and I'll give a background on this. Get rid of that information overlay. I pressed the I key, by the way, to do that. Is that I used to write a blog called Holy Crop, and it was about all things cropping. And every time Lightroom came out with a new crop tool, I was really excited, and I wanted to share that with people. And it's been a while since there's been a new crop tool, but there is something cool that came into Lightroom Classic and Camera Raw, and that's a crop overlay for the center crop. So if I grab the crop tool, I could hit the R to get the crop tool, and I type the O key, you'll see Lightroom cycles through some overlays. We had the rule of thirds, now we've got diagonals from the corners, and we've got this new one in the third position called the center crop overlay. I'll just cycle through the rest of them. This is the intersecting perpendiculars, this is the golden ratio, the Fibonacci spiral, and the various sizes of paper that you might print to. And lastly, there was the architectural grid. So coming back to the third one, we've got this new grid now that says this is the 50% mark on width and height right here. So you're going to crop. And where that might be handy is I want the eye of the butterfly to be exactly in the middle of the image. And if I want to do that, I don't have to finagle around counting little grids in the architectural or guessing in rule of thirds. I can literally place that where I would like it and say, let me center that crop right there. And now I've got a crop centered much like I like. If I want the center of the flower in the crop, I can put the flower in the crop. And there again, I've got exactly what I want. So if I know that I'm going to have an 8 by 10, I can set my aspect ratio and I can say center that flower on the 8 by 10. Maybe make it just a little bit bigger to give it some space to breathe in. And now I've got my center line crop. It wasn't something I was terribly excited about the first time I used it, but I find that I'm using it more and more now as time goes on. It's a handy thing to have to put something specifically in the center. And I know I've watched Rick Salmon in his dead center is deadly presentation. But if you're working on a reflection or a double reflection, a kaleidoscope type effect, it's absolutely critical to be able to place the crop centered around a focal point, like a reflection boundary, or in this case, a flower. Where you'd use it for a person, I don't know, but you might use it on this particular great blue heron picture. We'll grab R to get the crop tool. It remembers my overlay, and I can say, yeah, give me the eye in the center. I'm going to hit the X key to crop it this way. And if I wanted to do a portrait, I might bring it something like this and bring that eye just as close to the center as I can get it. In this case, I'm too close to the edge, but it might be a handy crop that you might want to use in your work someday. So just for review, if you hit the crop tool, you hit the overlay key, it starts at rule of thirds, it goes to the intersecting 45s, then it goes to the center crop, so it's going to be the third one in. Then you've got the intersecting perpendiculars, and if I hold down the Alt key, there we go, the Shift key, Shift and then the O key, you'll see that it will flip the perpendiculars and it will flip the Fibonacci sequence through all 8 of its positions. When I say 8, there's counterclockwise from each corner and clockwise from each corner. But if you ever need to get back, tap until you get to your center crop and tap around the O key again until you're back to your rule of thirds, and there you are. So that's a quick breakdown of the center crop feature, which I thought was cool. Now, Lightroom Classic and Camera Raw got the raw defaults functionality back in their release earlier this year. And there was a little bit of an outcry from the community because formerly when you set up raw defaults in Lightroom Classic, you could set them up by camera model and you could set them up by ISO. And when the new raw defaults came out, you could set them up by camera model, but you could not set them up by ISO. And the only way to set them up by ISO was to have a text editor and edit the preset that you were going to use to create the raw default. Well, that's changed now. I'm going to hit Escape to get out of this edit and go back to the grid. I'm going to grab my metadata filter, and I've preloaded it a little bit here because I wanted to pick file types, digital negatives. I wanted to pick this camera, and I wanted this image right here. So I've got an image shot from one camera at ISO 100 and another image shot at ISO 320. Now ideally, if you were going to do this for real, you'd probably take an image at ISO 100 or ISO 200, and then you'd take an image at like ISO 1600, and you would adjust them both precisely for the amount of noise reduction that you wished them to have. Then you select the both of them, and I'm going to go to the Develop module so I can expose my presets here. You can see they're both still selected in the film strip, and when I click Preset, I can say Create Preset, and down at the bottom there's the option to create an ISO adaptive preset. And this is really, really cool. What this does is this allows you to say, at ISO 100 I want to apply 6 for noise reduction. At ISO 3200 I want you to apply 55 for noise reduction. And then anytime I apply this preset, I want you to figure out what the ISO is and find the right spot in between that 6 and that 55 to apply to your image. So that means you could go out and you could shoot all day long with a dozen different ISOs, come back, apply one preset on import that's ISO adaptive, and it will correctly adjust the noise reduction for all of your images at once. It's a very, very powerful thing. And you see that there's a Learn More link here that describes exactly how to do it. That's where you would click if you needed to go out and learn a little bit more about it. But it's a very cool feature and something that you can use right now today. Works in Camera Raw and works in Lightroom Classic. But the ISO adaptive preset, if you build that as part of your initial preset, when you import into Lightroom, will save you a lot of work and at least get you to a very good spot from a noise reduction standpoint. It does not affect your sharpening, it just affects your noise reduction, so you will still have to adjust sharpening. But if, say, you have a preset that you apply, typically things people will apply on presets. I've seen people crop to square on presets. I've seen people do all kinds of weird things with their shots as they're coming in. But a lot of people will give saturation a little kick. They'll give the blacks a little pull back. They'll give a little bit of a vignette on import. They'll apply whatever their own flavor and taste of sharpening is. And then you can apply noise reduction now too, and that noise reduction will be adaptive. All you need is 2 images shot with the same camera at 2 vastly different ISOs, and those ISOs will be interpolated across the board. So it's a very, very cool feature to have. I was very excited when that one came in. One of the things that happened too is that there were a lot of performance improvements under the hood. Many people are reporting grid scrolling has gone nuts. Of course, I've got a grid of only 10 images here, so it's probably not anything that's going to be something I can demo right here, and it's probably not going to translate over video very well. But a lot of performance improvements, particularly around grid scrolling and about slider movement and image refresh, have gone in, and some other under the hood things with regard to collections and smart collections and counts on image files and things like that. So give it a test by a lot of people. I had one guy, I have a meeting every month with the Lightroom influencer community, and he said, you know, you kind of almost made it too fast. And that let me know that we were making progress in Lightroom Classic with scrolling, because Lightroom Desktop has always been a smooth scroller. It scrolls great. And Lightroom Classic has been trying to meet that bar ever since Lightroom Desktop came out. And the work that the Lightroom Classic team has done has been fabulous. So something to think about there. Give the performance a try. Your mileage may vary. You got an 8K monitor and a 2 gig video card, you're probably not going to see the performance. But if you're using a 4K monitor and a decent video card, you're probably going to say, yeah, that's a little zippier. I can get to the bottom of a grid of a lot of images. And as you can see by my all photographs collection, I have 385,000 images here. That's something that takes a long time to scroll through, and any improvement you can get on a big catalog is going to help you out like that. So that's one of the improvements that went in there. There were a couple of UI changes. I'll just pick any image. We'll go to this one, and we'll go to Develop Module, and you'll see that there's been UI changes in Tone Curve. And you'll see Tone Curve now has a different button set, and it also has color hinting. You can see that green is on this side, red is on this side, and as I move up and down, as I move towards the red, what happens on the image is kind of what happens in the Tone Curve. That's kind of nice. So there's been a new UI for Tone Curve. There's also been a new UI brought into the HSL panel. And, you know, those kinds of things make life just a little bit easier. So give those things a try. Check them out. Let us know how you like them. Something to think about. Of course, local hue is also available in Lightroom. So if I were to grab a local adjustment tool, we'll grab the adjustment brush, and I'm just going to paint a big, I'm going to turn on the overlay so you can see where I'm painting. I'm going to paint a big green swath or a big pink swath right on top of this leaf right here. And I'll turn off the overlay, and now we'll go down to that local hue tool, which you've seen in several of the other applications already. Turn off fine adjustment. We'll just go like crazy. You can see I can really change the color of that leaf if I want to whatever color I would like. And that's pretty cool. However, in Lightroom Classic and in Adobe Camera Raw, you have the ability to do what's called a color range mask. And a color range mask is not currently available in the Lightroom ecosystem of products, so they have to paint very carefully around that leaf. You can see that when I slide the slider drastically, that not only the leaf changes, but I also get a circle of orange where it used to be blue. That's where your color adjustment tool comes in. So you turn your range mask on to color, you say, give me an eyedropper and select some green. Now if I turn on the overlay, you can see that I've got a lot less selected. I might refine that just a bit because I'm spilling over here, and I can even refine it more with the amount slider. Now, when I come in and I adjust local hue, I'm just adjusting. We turn off that overlay. I'm just adjusting the area I've painted. So Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Camera Raw have a real advantage with local hue. They've got the ability to control with a color mask what they would like to do with the local hue tool. So if you're a Lightroom Classic user, if you go into Camera Raw and use it, you're going to be able to do a lot more things a lot more quickly than you would in the Lightroom ecosystem. And I have no doubt that range masking will come one day to the Lightroom ecosystem of products, but until that time, you're going to be limited to painting very carefully around these edges and using the auto mask functionality. But it's something very cool. I wanted to talk too about Sync UI improvements. So if you have your top panel down where you can see your modules, you'll notice that there's the Lightroom Classic icon over here now, brown. And you used to have this thing called, I'm not sure, this was a panel, I always called it the identity plate panel, but you would click on that and there would be information in there about currently, do you have address location lookup turned on? Do you have face detection turned on? Would you like to pause it? But there used to be information in here about sync as well. Now that information about sync has been moved because people needed more information about their syncing products, the things they're syncing to their phone or to their tablet. All the way on the right hand side of the interface next to where it says web, if you still have web visible on your screen, is a cloud icon. It's got a green check mark. That means I'm synced and up to date. And when I click on this, it tells me what my cloud storage is. It gives me a link out to frequently asked questions about sync. It tells me what's going on with my local activity. It lets me pause sync. And it lets me go into the panel where the sync settings are in preferences so I can see what's going on. Where are my files stored? What is syncing? What is not syncing? So this has become kind of your go-to place for, I want to find out what's going on with syncing. Which of my files aren't syncing? You've got a place to go, a sync information panel that's going to have all that information on it. And it's going to tell you, hey, am I getting really close to filling up my cloud storage? If you're on the Creative Cloud Photographer's plan, you only have 20 gigabytes of space. And that 20 gigabytes of space can fill up very quickly. This is a place for you to monitor that without having to go out to a web interface. So it's very cool. I was very excited about that. There's been improvements around multi-batch export. So if I select a group of files and I want to go to export, there used to be some issues if you were to select, multiple copies. I want a blog image, I want a Facebook cover image, I want a Holy Crop blog image. And I would select all of these, and then I would have various rename settings for these that were set up, and sometimes there would be collisions among those rename settings. I might set up to have a 5x7 print size export, and then I would have a 5x7 black and white print export, and those two might use a similar file name if they went into the same folder. There's been some work to fix some of that. I would recommend you read the information on the Adobe blog about that. And finally, as far as Lightroom Classic goes, and this one we've been waiting for a long time. For those of you who shoot iPhone, there's a high efficiency image format. And Lightroom Classic's been able to handle the high efficiency image format for a long time, but it could not handle the HEVC, which I believe stands for High Efficiency Video Codec. I could be wrong about the C, I'll have to check that. But Lightroom Classic did not support that until the June update. And as of the June update, any of your files that you sync from your iPhone or your iPad that are HEVC videos now will sync and show correctly within the Lightroom Classic interface and behave just like any other ordinary video would. And that's very, very cool because that closed the loop on a big feature request. It closed the loop on a big hole that Lightroom Classic had that Lightroom ecosystem's been able to handle since virtually day one. And one caution I want to give you about this is that back in January, Jeff Tranberry on his Digital Imaging Crawlspace blog wrote a post with Lisa Gno, who is the product manager for Lightroom Classic, that with the release of the June update, Windows 7 would no longer be supported for video. And that was tied to this HEVC problem, is that, Windows 7 was not going to be able to use this new technology. And as it turns out, Windows 7 will be able to use that new technology. So Windows 7 is able to now read those HEVC files. However, there is a plan currently that Windows 7 support will end at some point, and most likely by the end of the year. So if you are a Windows 7 user using Lightroom Classic, you probably are closing in on the last version that you will be able to successfully install. We will have another camera update coming out later in the year. You're probably safe on that one, but if you are a Windows 7 user, before year end, you will want to think about updating to Windows 10. I already realized too that Windows 8 is not supported on the current version of Lightroom. After that time, when the changeover is made, you will be needing to use Windows 10 on your end. And something similar will happen with Mac. Whenever we do those kind of updates, typically we support the current version, which for Mac is Catalina, and we support the next two older versions after that, which is at Sierra and High Sierra. I get confused by the names. I go by 10.15, 10.14, 10.13. And at some point, Apple is going to release their new OS, and it will be 10.16, and then support will likely fade for 10.13 at that point. 13 or 14? 13, yeah. I get confused sometimes, so let me make sure I've got it right. So those are a couple of things to kind of keep in mind, but that's a brief rundown of the entire ecosystem, classic, and camera raw updates that came in for June. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to show you a few tricks with a couple of the tools, particularly the local adjustment tool. So let's grab that. So here's an image that all of you will know and love because it's a Minnesota image. It's the lighthouse at Grand Marais. And we'll just kind of grab and collapse that panel over there. And this is one we'll look at with the local hue tool. Now you might say, Rick, what do we want to do with the local hue tool? This is an orange image. It's orange and black. It's very monochromatic, but it's a good example of what the limitations were and where they are today. So local hue. Here we had local hue. If I wanted to adjust this, I could have adjusted a slider. You can see I can make the reds redder, or I can make the reds orange, but that's really the limit of what I had available. I could grab a target adjustment tool and I could slide it up and down, and it might move two sliders for me, but really I'm just adjusting the two colors. And if I wanted to get, say, a green, for example, or really more of a blue, I can't get there because these tools are limited in range by design so that they blend very well. Let's go to a local adjustment tool. Now if I were to paint a swath of tool on here, we'll just go there. There's our overlay, and I'm going to hit Shift O to make it a green overlay so it's easy to see against this orange sunset. And I were to come down now and I were to use this local adjustment tool. Let me turn off the overlay. You can see now I can get a blue because this tool has a full 360-degree movement, whereas the old tool did not. So when I get all the way to 0 or minus 180, it's the same color pretty much as when I'm at 180, but in between I have lots of different subtle shades that I can go to, and that's kind of handy. But you might say, Rick, I don't want to have to paint my whole image to make it blue. And that's pretty much what you're doing right there. So if you want to use the power of the local hue tool, but you want to use it on a whole image, you want to go to a graduated filter. So I'll drop the brush tool, graduated filter. Normally when you draw a graduated filter, you drag and you stop. Where you start, it's 100%. Where you stop, it's 0%. In the middle, it's 50. I don't want to do that because if I were to do this and then I were to use the local hue, it's probably going to look pretty silly. Yeah, it's not bad, I guess, but you can see that it's really almost cartoonish what I'm trying to do. I'll double click it to reset it to 0. There we are. I'm going to delete this tool. So what I might want to do if I want to do a local hue is I will say I want to be 100% and I want to be 0%. But I want all that 100% to live on my image like this. Now I've got the ability to adjust the entire image as a local hue. And that's very cool. And the nice thing is I can still adjust white balance to bring out tones and detail from the original raw without losing the ability to do the hue. So now I've got an extra set of color tools. Before I could have done the white balance adjustments and got some tinting going on and done some things, but they have a limited range too. Temperature is only, I think it won't go down quite to candlelight, and tint has a range that's a specific area as well too. But now I've got this, and I still have my ability to hand tint with another color, like this dark blue, like this red. And you can start to get some really cool cross-colorization effects when you do this. I'm just going to turn the saturation down to eliminate that, but it's something to think about. You can kind of see, what's going on with it. Lots of things you can do. That's a gross adjustment. That's something that's, pretty radical. We're going to go to this Costa Rican tree frog here. And here I've got something that's a little bit different. See, I've got a frog and he's got some blue greens, and then I got a leaf and it's got some yellow greens. So if I went down to the old hue adjustment tool and I tried to adjust greens, I can kind of adjust that separately. The frog needs to be adjusted here, but I really can't get all of what I want because I can't select all of the frog adjustments without getting the plant adjustments as well. This is where local hue comes to the rescue. So I'm going to come up here and we're going to grab the brush tool, and just gently I'm going to paint in over the top of the frog just as much as I can. And I don't really want to adjust the blacks so much. I'll turn on the overlay so you can see where I painted, and we'll hit the Shift O to bring it back to red so it shows up. Now this is where I might grab my color range mask again and just kind of sample a little bit of this green area here without really touching the black, and you can see now I've got just my frog. And if I adjust the sensitivity, I can fine tune it even just a little bit more. We'll turn off our overlay so we can watch our tool in action. Now I'll use this adjustment, and you can see now I'm not messing with my tones in the green. I've just got the frog, and it's working out pretty good. And if I want to turn on the fine adjustment, I can do that too, and just subtly change it, just make it a little more blue. And it really slows down that tool and makes it quite usable. That's an example of where you might want to use this tool, is something like this where I can cover just that frog. And if I go even finer, you can see I can get just the areas of the frog that are striped. And we can adjust anything else we want to do. We can go darker or lighter if we would like. Turn off the overlay so you can see what we're doing again. Keep forgetting to do that, but you've got the ability to adjust that and then actually come down and use that range mask amount slider to fine tune it even more. And if ever you need to go in and grab another color, you can see, like if I zoom in here, you can see that there's an area right here where I'm not getting it all. I can grab a bigger slice of color, and now I've selected just that area. If I show you the reds, you can see where we're at, what we're selecting, and it's a very cool way to adjust some things. Now where I was really excited about this was flesh tones, because flesh tones are always the tough part. So we're going to get rid of that adjustment. For those of you who saw my adjustment on face retouching, that was the gross skin softening that we did on my face. But let's say I'd like to adjust some skin tones. And I'll zoom in here, and you can see that I've got some various red things on my face. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to reset this to a, if I can get out of there, reset this to a zeroed preset. And what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to paint some of this red out on my skin. That's the goal. I want to paint some of that out. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to do that with the local hue tool. So I might paint on my red cheek here, and maybe just this side of my nose, kind of so you can see what's going on here. You see every pore, right? And if I turn on the overlay, and again I'm going to switch the overlay with a Shift O to green so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I can kind of paint in here just real loosely. Our goal is to get the red out. That's the goal. So I'll turn off the overlay. You've seen what I painted. I'll turn it back on. Now I'm going to say I'd like to select a color for this. We're going to select Color Range Mask, grab our eyedropper tool, and we're going to try to find some red. Now I can't really get the red with that overlay tool on there, so I'm looking for something that's really red, like this little spot on my nose. Now I turn the overlay on and adjust it down. You can say, okay, so that's the area that's really red and it's really feathered out. I'll turn the O, then I'll come up and I'll have fine adjustment enabled on my hue tool. You can see that I can make that red, or I can make it more orange, and I can effectively make it disappear. So now that red is really gone on my face right there, and it looks much more like the orange that's on the sides of my face. Something very, very cool that you can do. If you want to do some effects with some other things, you're certainly welcome to. Let me go down here and grab the red-eyed green tree frog. Let's say I had this in the develop module and I wanted to go down and adjust the hue on his eyes. And we'll grab the target adjustment tool and watch as I adjust the hue on his eyes, look what happens to his feet. You can see that the feet adjust along with the eyes, but what if I wanted to adjust the eyes differently than the feet? I wanted them to have a little bit of a different tone. That's a spot for local hue. So I'll grab a brush and we'll just paint it really loosely over the eye. I'll turn on the overlay key. So I painted it loosely over the eye. Now I'm going to grab the local color adjustment range mask. And we're going to grab that and just right there. And if I turn on the overlay now, you'll see that I have just got the red eyes, and that's all I've got. Now I can come up to that local hue tool. We'll take off the fine adjustment because I want you to be able to see this. And I can really go like crazy. We can make him blue or purple-eyed. You can see I've got a little bit of overspill. So I might come down to my color range mask and adjust that amount down just a little bit. I might have to go in and erase a little bit more, but yeah, we're getting pretty close right there. So now I've got the ability to adjust two different things that are red in the same image and adjust them completely differently. And I could have painted the feet a different color if I wanted to too, but I can come around here and really do whatever I would like. So it's a very handy tool to have. I think it's going to be great for things like removing rosacea. This is my daughter Whitney. We actually took this shot as a image for a article on how to remove the red, and you can see she's got red cheeks, but she's got orange skin. I keep hitting the brush by mistake. So what I might want to do is I might want to select that color. So we want to select the red on her cheeks, and this time I'm going to select the color first. So we're going to paint a little bit on there just so I can enable my range mask tool and select color. And we're going to say, let's take this red right here. And now I'm going to turn on the overlay tool so I can watch where I'm painting. I need to get rid of my eyedropper. And as I paint, it's going to limit that paint to wherever the range mask is. If I come down here, and there we go. And I'm just doing half faces today because I want you to be able to see what the other side of the face looks like. You can see when I go out to the hair, it doesn't go out there. So it's really limiting me to the skin. And I could change that range down and say, let's just grab the red skin. I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. That's the red skin right there. Now what I'd like to do is come up to the local adjustment for hue and turn off my overlay, use fine adjustment, and I can adjust it. You can see it turns purple. I can adjust it this way really softly, and you can see there I'm starting to see yellow, so I'll back it off just a little bit. And it lets me really fine-tune that skin tone very nicely. If I come down here and toggle it on and off, I'm hoping you'll be able to see this on the video. It's a very subtle thing. It does show up there pretty good. So you can see, and then I can go about just painting out the red wherever I would like to across her face. It's a very cool tool. If you need to do a lot of images in a short amount of time in Lightroom, you can go a long way here. A little bit of red on her chin. I don't think there was any down on her chest. No, but there's some on her forehead. We'll grab all that and just paint it in as a nice orange. And it's very natural. If I go back out and toggle it on and off, you can see the red come back in and the red come back out. And you can always dial it back a little bit if you like to. So that's very cool. That's really the big demo I had planned for you today, was the Lightroom classic use of the local adjustment tool for hue. And of course it would apply to any number of images you wanted to use it on. I just wanted to show you a few examples. So realistically, we're at the end of the program for today. I'd planned for this video to be about an hour, and looking at the clock on Facebook Live, it says an hour and 3 minutes. If you do have comments about the video, you can leave them in the chat pod or post them on the video when it goes live on Facebook. I see we've had anywhere from 18 to 20, 25 people on here. Typically, the videos that we've been putting on Facebook Live have been seeing about 20 people live during the video audience. And then when we put it out to recorded playback, we'll see 100, 150 people show up. And like I say, it's also my goal to have this posted in a way that people who don't use Facebook can use it as well. So that's kind of our goal there. But I wanted to thank you all. Adobe appreciates you as a customer. We are glad to have you. And we're looking for ways to reach out to people during the COVID pandemic, I guess, sequestering, quarantining, whatever word you prefer, and give you content that you can use to help you with your photography life. I know a lot of the people I've talked to have been sequestered editing old images when they can't get out and shoot. And for me, I'm a studio photographer, and a lot of my studio action is very limited. In fact, so much so that my daughter, son-in-law, and grandson who moved in with me have taken over my studio as their bedroom because it's the quietest, coolest, darkest room in the house for the summer. And so even if I was able to get people in and shoot them safely in this type of environment, right now there's a bed and a bunch of baby toys where I would normally have my seamless paper. So there you are. I want to wish you all well. Thank you for coming to our virtual user community. We're always looking for feedback on what to do for the next one, which will be sometime in mid-September. And if you've got ideas for what you'd like to see or tutorials, you can either come to the Lightroom Q&A chat in a couple of weeks or leave them in the Facebook channel here. But in any case, thank you. And I hope you got something out of the show today. And we'll try to put up some links as well to some of the content and tutorials that have been made available online. I wish everyone a great Monday, July the 6th. Thank you for coming to the presentation today.